Éthique
Professional ethics
professionnelle et
and code of
déontologie.
conduct. A. Ethics. Ethics. Values that can be applied in both a personal and professional context. Ethics is the art of guiding one's conduct. Ethics therefore lies outside the realm of good and evil, of what is permitted and what is forbidden, that is to say, it differs from morality, which is based on the distinction between good and evil. Unlike professional ethics, there is no code or set of written rules that rigidly defines morality. This in no way implies that a breach of ethics cannot be subject to disciplinary action. B. Professional ethics. Ethical conduct at work. Professional ethics lie between morality and the law. Morality tells us what is right and what is wrong. The law sets out what is permitted and what is prohibited. The code of ethics sets out how one should conduct oneself in all circumstances. The term ethics refers to rules that are duties and obligations, in other words, what one ought to do. It is the study of the legal and moral rules that govern a profession. It is the science of duties. Consequently, professional conduct is synonymous with ethics. 1. Standards. It is the set of rules or behavioral norms specific to a particular group or society, which are learnt, shared and legitimized by values, and the failure to observe which results in sanctions. The concept of a norm refers to a rule or law, a model or an ideal. Norms define appropriate or expected behavior in social life. There may be instances where an individual refuses to internalize the norms instilled by the group or society. Individual or collective behavior that deviates from the norm creates dysfunction and gives rise to sanctions. The concept of deviance is understood as an abnormality, a state or the expression of behaviors or opinions that differ from those of the majority. If there is deviance, it is because there are differences in values. We do not share the same values. Let us now consider the concept of values. Life and death. Article 2 of the Code of Ethics. Doctors, in the service of the individual and public health, carry out their duties whilst respecting human life, the individual and their dignity. The respect due to the individual need not cease after death. Respect for life and death. In a narrower sense, life takes on a biological character that implies reproduction. B. Shah 1 stated that life is a set of functions that resist death. But healthcare staff fight right up to the very last minute to prolong life in a meaningful way. To this end, palliative care must not be neglected, and the support given to patients must be given the utmost attention. It is not a question of preventing death, but of respecting the circumstances surrounding death when medical means can no longer prevent it. Everyone agrees that they wish, both for themselves and for others, a dignified and peaceful end. This is a way of respecting life as it draws to a close. Death. For a long time, death was defined by a mechanical phenomenon, the cessation of the heart, which did not prevent people who were apparently dead from being buried, only for them to wake up and stir within their death, as certain exhumations have shown. Today, death is primarily defined as brain death. Respect for the dead. Respecting life does not preclude acknowledging that, for any individual, it has an inevitable end. This is not a contradiction, but a complementary view. To respect death, the final stage, is also to respect life. Professional confidentiality. 1. Definition. This refers to the obligation not to disclose to third parties any medical or personal information about a patient which, if disclosed, could have harmful consequences for that person. It has its origins in the Hippocratic Oath: whatever I may see or hear in the course of my practice, I will keep secret what must not be disclosed. No indication of a person's presence must appear in areas accessible to members of the public. Displaying patients' names is prohibited, monitoring sheets in rooms, etc. Information regarding whether or not a patient is present in a ward must not be disclosed over the telephone. Anonymity must be strictly respected in the case of childbirth under X, as well as for drug users who request it. No private information may be recorded in the file. Only information necessary for their care may be included. 2. Exceptions, cases where this does not apply. There are certain cases permitted by law. The patient themselves is, of course, authorized to disclose certain information. Confidentiality may be lifted before the investigating judge in the event of legal proceedings. Lifting of the duty of confidentiality in cases relating to the protection of public health and administrative requirements for mandatory reporting, occupational and sexually transmitted diseases, anonymous reports, workplace accidents, HIV-positive status. 3. Who is covered by professional confidentiality? A. Medical staff, Article 36. Algerian Code of Medical Ethics, professional confidentiality, established in the interests of the patient and the community, is binding on all doctors and dental surgeons, unless otherwise provided for by law. Article 37. Professional confidentiality covers everything that a doctor or dentist has seen, heard, understood or been entrusted within the course of their professional practice. Article 38. The doctor or dentist shall ensure that support staff comply with the requirements of professional confidentiality. Article 39. Doctors and dental surgeons must ensure that the clinical records and documents they hold concerning their patients are protected against any unauthorized disclosure. B. Paramedical staff, Article 3. Code of Ethics for Paramedical Professionals, April 2007, professional confidentiality, established in the interests of patients, is binding on all paramedical staff under the conditions laid down by law. Paramedical staff must keep confidential any information entrusted to them. Professional confidentiality covers everything that has come to the paramedics' knowledge in the course of their work, that is to say, not only what has been entrusted to them, but also what they have seen, heard or understood. Article 4. Paramedical staff must uphold the rights of patients who request access to their medical records, subject to the provisions of the law. Article 5. Paramedical staff are entitled to access the patient's medical records and to be informed of the patient's condition in order to adapt their course of action accordingly. Article 48 of the Public Health Code of the 19th of December 1976. Except in cases provided for by law, medical auxiliaries and students at paramedical training institutes and schools may not disclose information that has come to their knowledge in the course of their professional duties, or during their training placement and which, by their very nature, must remain confidential. Legislation. Professional secrecy is a fundamental obligation, enshrined in the First Criminal Code, as set out in the following articles. Art. 301, amended, doctors, surgeons, pharmacists, midwives or any other persons who, by virtue of their status, profession or permanent or temporary duties, are entrusted with secrets, who, except where the law obliges or authorizes them to act, whistleblowers who reveal these secrets shall be punished with imprisonment for a term of 1 to 6 months and a fine of 500 to 5,000 DA. Patients' rights. The relationship between patients and doctors, and more broadly, between healthcare professionals, has gradually matured, leading to the establishment of numerous rights for patients. Various pieces of legislation and regulations have accompanied this shift towards a more mature dialogue between doctor and patient, recognizing numerous rights for the latter. Changing attitudes towards issues such as pain, patient dignity, end-of-life care, patient information, informed consent to treatment, medical risk and medical liability have gradually enabled further progress to be made in the development of patients' rights. 1. The principle of free and informed consent. Patients are free to choose or change their doctor. Doctors must respect this right and ensure that it is upheld. This freedom of choice is a fundamental principle of the doctor-patient relationship. Article 44. Any medical procedure which poses a serious risk to the patient is subject to the free and informed consent of the patient, or of persons authorized by the patient, or by law. If the patient is in danger or unable to give consent, the doctor or dentist must provide the necessary treatment. 2. The right to information. Articles L.1111-1 to L.1111-3 of the Public Health Code set out the patient's right to information. The content of the information: the doctor has a duty to provide information, the scope of which covers various aspects the investigations carried out. Useful preventative measures. The diagnosis. The nature of the processing carried out. Frequent or serious risks that are normally foreseeable, or even unforeseeable. If a patient refuses treatment, the doctor must inform them of the consequences of that refusal. Article 43, Algerian Code of Ethics, Official Journal Number 52 of 8 July, 1992, the doctor must endeavor to inform their patient, in a clear and honest manner, of the reasons behind any medical procedure. Article 44 of the Algerian Code of Ethics: any medical procedure which poses a serious risk to the patient is subject to the patient's free and informed consent, or that of persons authorized by the patient or by law. If the patient is in danger or unable to give consent, the doctor must provide the necessary treatment. 3. The right to access medical records. Article L1111-7 of the Public Health Code, CSP, provides, every person has access to all information concerning their health held by healthcare professionals and healthcare establishments. 4. Medical confidentiality. Medical confidentiality stems from the principle of respect for the individual and their privacy. It is which also forms the basis of a relationship of trust between the patient and the doctor. Article L.1110-4 of the Public Health Code provides that any person receiving care from a healthcare professional, an institution, a healthcare network, or any other organization involved in prevention and care is entitled to respect for their privacy and the confidentiality of their information relevant. It is mandatory for all healthcare professionals, as well as for all professionals working within the healthcare system. Medical confidentiality applies to the doctor until the patient has consented to its waiver. In fact, when drawing up a medical certificate, the doctor must consult the patient regarding its content so as not to breach confidentiality. 5. Charter for hospitalized patients. 10 key principles are thus set out. 1. Free access to hospital care, available to everyone and in particular to the most disadvantaged. 2. The right to receive appropriate care. 3. The right of patients and their relatives to information. 4. The principle of consent. Consent must be freely given and informed. 5. The principle of specific consent for certain procedures, in particular for biomedical research and screening procedures, e.g., during a biopsy. 6. The principle of personal freedom. The patient may leave the facility at any time, except in cases provided for by law and after having been informed of the risks involved. 7. Respect for the individual and their privacy. 8. The right to privacy and confidentiality. 9. The procedures governing the right of access to information contained in medical records. 10. Possible remedies in the event of damage. De prejudice. Children's rights. This is the International Convention on the Rights of the Child, adopted unanimously on the 20th of November, 1989, by the United Nations General Assembly. 3 principles underpin this text. 1. States undertake to guarantee the same rights to all children. 2. The best interests of the child must be a primary consideration in all decisions concerning children. 3. Those around children have a responsibility to provide them with guidance and appropriate advice on exercising their rights. Definition of a child. A child means any human being under the age of 18, unless the age of majority is reached earlier, under the law applicable to that person. Art. 1. Non-discrimination. The state's parties undertake to respect the rights set out in this convention and to guarantee them to every child within their jurisdiction, without any distinction whatsoever, irrespective of any consideration of race, color, sex, language, religion, political, or other opinion of the child or of his or her parents, or legal guardians. Art. 2. The best interests of the child. Any decision concerning a child must take full account of the child's best interests. The state must ensure that the child receives the protection and care necessary for their well-being in the event that their parents, or those responsible for them, fail to provide them. Art. 3. For implementation of the rights recognized in the Convention, the state undertakes to ensure the exercise of the rights recognized by the Convention. Art. 4. Survival and development. Every child has an inherent right to life. The state has an obligation to ensure the child's survival and development. Art. 6. Name and nationality. Every child has the right to a name from birth and the right to a nationality. Article 7. Respect for identity. The state has a duty to protect, and, where necessary, restore the fundamental aspects of a child's identity: name, nationality, family relationships. Art. 8. Separation from parents. A child has the right to live with their parents unless this is deemed contrary to their best interests, and the right to maintain contact with both parents, if they are separated from one or both of them. Where the state is responsible for the measures that led to the separation, imprisonment, exile, expulsion, death, he is obliged to provide information on the whereabouts of the family member or members. Art. 9. Family reunification. A child and their parents have the right to leave any country and to enter their own country for the purposes of family reunification, or to maintain the relationship between the child and their parents. Art. 10. Unlawful removal and non-return. The state must combat the abduction and unlawful non-return of children abroad by a parent or a third party. Art. 11. The child's opinion in all matters and proceedings affecting them. Children have the right to express their views and to have those views taken into account. Art. 12. Freedom of expression. Children have the right to freedom of expression, to receive and impart information and ideas of all kinds, and to express their opinions, provided that this does not infringe upon the rights or reputation of others. Art. 13. Freedom of thought, conscience and religion. The child has the right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion, subject to the guiding role of the parents and the restrictions prescribed by law. Art. 14. Freedom of association. Children have the right to assemble and form associations, provided that the rights of others are respected. Art. 15. Privacy policy. The child shall not be subject to arbitrary or unlawful interference with his or her privacy, family, home or correspondence, nor to unlawful attacks on his or her honor. Art. 16. Access to relevant information. The state recognizes the role of the media in disseminating information to children that is consistent with their moral well-being, with knowledge of peoples, and with understanding between peoples, and that respects their culture. The state must take measures to encourage this and protect children from information and materials that are harmful to their well-being. Art. 17. Parental responsibility. The responsibility for bringing up a child rests primarily and jointly with both parents. The state has a duty to assist them in fulfilling this duty. Art. 18. Protection against abuse. The state has a duty to protect children from all forms of abuse by their parents, or by any other person to whom they are entrusted, and to establish prevention and treatment programs in this regard. Art. 19. Protection of a child removed from their natural environment. Any child who is temporarily or permanently deprived of his or her family environment is entitled to special protection and assistance from the state. Such alternative care may take the form, in particular, of placement with a family, kafala under Islamic law, adoption or, where necessary, whilst taking into account the need for a degree of continuity in the child's upbringing, as well as their ethnic, religious and cultural background. Art. 20. Adoption in countries where adoption is permitted and/or authorized, it may only take place in the best interests of the child and where all the necessary safeguards are in place, as well as all the necessary authorizations from the competent authorities. Art. 21. Refugee children. The state shall take appropriate measures to ensure that a child seeking refugee status, or considered a refugee under the rules and procedures of applicable international or national law, is granted such status, and shall cooperate with the competent bodies responsible for providing such protection. Art. 22. Children with disabilities. Children with disabilities have the right to special care and to an appropriate education and training that promote their independence. Art. 23. Children's health. Every child has the right to the highest attainable standard of health and to benefit from medical and rehabilitation services. Particular emphasis is placed on primary health care and preventive care, on public health education, and on reducing infant mortality. Art. 24. Review of the placement. The state recognizes that a child who has been placed by the competent authorities to receive care, protection, or physical or mental treatment, and the right to a periodic review of such treatment in relation to their placement. Art. 25. Social security. Children have the right to social security. Art. 26. Standard of living. Every child has the right to an adequate standard of living, and parents have the primary responsibility for ensuring this. Art. 27. Education. Every child has the right to education. The state has an obligation to ensure that education is compulsory and free of charge. Discipline in schools must be enforced whilst respecting the child's dignity as a human being. Art. 28. Educational objectives. The state recognizes that education aims to foster the full development of the child's personality and talents, and to prepare the child for an active adult life. Art. 29. Children from minority or indigenous groups, native to the country where they live, a child belonging to an ethnic, religious or linguistic minority, or a minority. Indigenous peoples have the right to enjoy their cultural life, to practice their own religion and to use their own language. Art. 30. Leisure and cultural activities. Children have the right to leisure, play and participation in cultural and artistic activities. Art. 31. Children. The state has a duty to protect children from any work that endangers their health, education, or development, to set minimum ages for admission to employment, and to specify the conditions of employment. Art. 32. Drug use and trafficking. The state must protect children from the consumption and use of narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. Art. 33. Sexual exploitation. Children have the right to be protected from violence and sexual exploitation. The state must take all appropriate measures at national, bilateral and multilateral levels to prevent such exploitation. Art. 34. Sales and collection. The state must take all appropriate measures at national and bilateral levels and multilateral measures to prevent the abduction, sale or trafficking of children for any purpose and in any form. Art. 35. Torture and deprivation of liberty. Torture, cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment, the death penalty, life imprisonment and unlawful or arbitrary arrest or detention are prohibited. Children in custody must be separated from adult prisoners. Art. 36. Administration and justice for children. Any child suspected of or found guilty of committing an offense has the right to have their rights, fundamental rights, are respected and the guarantees of due process are ensured, including the right to receive appropriate assistance in preparing and presenting one's defense. Art. 37. Human rights. 1. General overview of human rights. Human rights are based on three simple principles: freedom, equality, dignity. Human rights are the set of rights and freedoms considered essential to human nature. When we talk about human rights, we think of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of the 10th of December, 1948, adopted by the United Nations General Assembly. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it consists of two parts. The section on civil and political rights, Articles 3 to 21. The section on social, economic, and cultural rights, Articles 22 to 27. This is how every region of the world has, in its own way, sought to make the Universal Declaration of Human Rights its own in order to promote respect for the rights and freedoms of individuals. This involves A. The European Convention on Human Rights, 1950, which contains 66 articles and comprises three parts: individual rights, Articles 1 to 13, the measures to be taken to uphold these individual rights, general provisions. The African Charter on Human Rights, 1981, which contains 68 articles and comprises two parts. B. The 1964 Inter-American Convention of San Jose. D. The Rights and Duties of Individuals, Articles 1 to 29, measures to safeguard human rights, Articles 30 to 63. Disability rights. Thanks to the Act of the 11th of February 2005 on Equal Rights and Opportunities, Participation and Citizenship for People with Disabilities, new rights have been introduced for people with disabilities. 1. Definition of disability. For the purposes of this Act, a disability is defined as any limitation on activity or restriction of the extent to which a person's participation in society is impaired in their environment as a result of a substantial, long-term or permanent impairment of one or more physical, sensory, mental, cognitive or psychological functions, multiple disabilities, or a disabling health condition. 2. Disability law. A. The right to workplace adjustments. The government provides funding the adaptation of the workplace by modifying or purchasing the machinery, tools and personal equipment required by workers with disabilities to carry out their duties. B. The right to part-time work. Authorization to work part-time is granted automatically, following consultation with the occupational health doctor. Remuneration is and therefore proportional to the time worked. C. Priority for transfers. Priority for transfers may be granted to the beneficiaries listed opposite. Favorable retirement conditions. Civil servants with a disability may, subject to certain conditions, be eligible to retire before the statutory retirement age. They must provide evidence that they have had a permanent disability rating of at least 80% for a certain period. 3. Who are the beneficiaries? Workers recognized as having a disability, victims of workplace accidents or occupational diseases, recipients of a disability pension, war invalids in receipt of a military disability pension, civilian victims of the war, victims of a terrorist attack, holders of a disability card. Professional liability. I. Practicing a paramedical profession. The nursing profession involves the analysis, organization, and delivery of nursing care, and its assessment, participation in health education and training initiatives. They carry out their work in collaboration with other professionals in the health sector, the social and medico-social sector, and the education sector. Pursuant to Order No. 76 to 79 of the 23rd of October, 1976, Official Journal Number 101 of 19 December 1976, page 1116, concerning the Public Health Code Executive Decree Number 91-107 of 27 April 1991, concerning the special status of paramedical staff, published in the Official Journal Number 22 of 15 May 1991, Executive Decree Number 11-121 of 15 Rabi Ethany 1432, corresponding to 20 Mark 2011 on the special status of civil servants in the public health paramedical services, published in the Official Journal Number 17. Medical assistant or nursing roles, Algerian Health Code. Article 41. The term practicing a medical auxiliary profession means the usual provision by persons other than doctors, dental surgeons and pharmacists of ancillary technical services relating to preventive, social and rehabilitative measures, and to the establishment of diagnoses, as determined by the Minister responsible for public health. Article 42. The Minister responsible for public health shall lay down the qualification requirements that medical assistants must meet. It also specifies the professional titles under which they carry out the services and procedures covered by the provisions of Article 41. General conditions governing the practice of the medical assistant profession. Article 44. No person may practice as a medical assistant unless they meet the following conditions. 1. Demonstrate the required qualities. 2. Be authorized by the Minister responsible for public health. 3. Have their qualifications and diplomas registered with the Walais Health Department within 1 month of taking up their post. This last condition does not apply to medical auxiliaries who are civil servants in the public health services and the health services of the People's National Army. Article 45. Medical assistants shall carry out their duties in accordance with the conditions laid down by regulation. 1. Either in public health services and institutions under their supervision as civil servants. 2. Either in healthcare facilities or in-house medical and social care centers, under the supervision and control of a healthcare professional. 3. Or in commercial establishments relating to their professional qualifications. 2. The professional's identity. Working to support people's health, the public health nurse takes on the responsibility for all aspects of healthcare, including health promotion, disease prevention, and care for the sick. Whatever the role entrusted to a public health nurse, their professional identity enables them to identify with the profession on the basis of their initial nursing training. This course aims to develop adaptable, creative, and independent nurses. The nursing students' identity formation takes place through role modeling, immersion in the culture, and the process of comparing their idealized view of the profession with the reality of their clinical placements. Gradually, these future professionals will be able to distance themselves, assert themselves, and build their own identity. 2. Initial training. The aim of the training is to enable public health nurses to fulfill each of their roles, whilst taking into account the ethical and legal aspects of their profession. The curriculum emphasizes the concept of the nurse's versatility. The educational principles of this program aim at the development of creativity and adaptability, in line with the diversity of practice settings and with developments in science, technology, and healthcare needs. 3. From personal identity to professional identity. The student body in public health nursing is overwhelmingly female, 60 to 80% women. All students have their own personal identity and a conception of the profession that is linked to their identity. Students will therefore develop individually in different ways during their training. Identity is constructed and transformed through the individual's multiple interactions with their environment. Thus, the process of identity formation will lead the student to be both the same and different. 4. Role and areas of responsibility of the professional. The specific role of a public health nurse involves care related to bodily functions to provide care and support for daily living, and to partially or fully compensate for a lack or reduction in the independence of an individual or group of people. In this context, public health nurses have the skills to take the initiative and provide the care they deem necessary. They carry out specific procedures to maintain or restore a person's health and support them, all of which contribute to prevention, screening, diagnosis, treatment and research. 5. Definition of the duties of a public health nurse. The role and areas of responsibility are defined in the job reference framework established by l'Institut National de Pédagogie et de Formation Paramédicale, INPFP, et par le Décret Exécutif en degree 11 to 121 du 15 Rabi Ethnie 1432 correspondant AU 20 Mars 2011 portant statut particulier des fonctionnaires appartenant auxiliary corps des paramédicaux de Santé Publique. Art. 41. Public health nurses are responsible, in particular, for 1. To contribute to the maintenance, restoration and promotion of people's physical and mental health. 2. To provide nursing care in accordance with the duties specific to their role, in on-medical prescription, or in the presence of a doctor, and in cases of extreme urgency on the basis of written emergency protocols. 3. To monitor, assess and keep track of changes in patients' health, to draw up the care plan, to plan the related activities, and to maintain and update the patient's care record. 4. To welcome and to provide educational support to students and trainees. 6. Places of work. 1. Public hospitals. 2. Public non-hospital facilities. 3. Semi-public organizations. 4. Private organizations. 5. Working from home, self-employed. 7. Job reference. According to the Public Health Nursing Training Program ISP or technical function, 1. Patient care activities are activities and care that public health nurses are authorized to carry out as part of their specific role. The public health nurse takes the lead in organizing this care, arranges for it to be provided, and carries out assessments, where such care is provided in a health, social or medico-social establishment or service, or at home. The nurse may, under their own responsibility, provide it in collaboration with the care staff under their supervision, and within the limits of the latter's recognized competence. 1. Welcome the patient. 2. Maintain a clear airway, suction secretions from a patient, whether intubated or tracheostomized or not. 3. Perform manual instrumental ventilation using a mask. 4. To help monitor the hygiene and balanced diet of children and adults. Help monitor the hygiene and balanced diet of children and adults. 5. Administer feeding via a gastric tube. 6. Change the gastric feeding tube. 7. Monitor and educate the patient on bowel and bladder function. 8. Change the bladder catheter. 9. Provide care for and monitor patients undergoing renal or peritoneal dialysis. 10. Arrange and monitor the patient's rest and sleep. 11. Provide care and educate the patient on personal hygiene and cleanliness. 12. Carry out oral care using non-medicated products. 13. Clean, disinfect and sterilize the equipment. 14. Ensure compliance with hospital hygiene regulations. 15. Provide care for and monitor patients in a sterile environment. 16. Use simple methods of heating and cooling. 17. Provide care for and monitor newborns in incubators. 18. Position the patient in a way that is appropriate to their condition or disability. 19. Help the patient to get up and assist them with walking without using rehabilitation techniques. 20. Preventing and treating pressure sores. 21. Preventing thrombosis without medication. 22. Provide care and look out for signs of complications that may arise in a patient wearing a plaster cast or other form of immobilization. 23. Measure and assess the key parameters used to monitor patients' health: temperature, pulse, blood pressure, respiratory rate, urine output, weight, vital signs, pupillary reflexes, skin defense reflexes, observation of signs of altered consciousness. 24. Collect the biological data obtained using the reading techniques. Next test: urine, glycosuria, ketonuria, proteinuria, blood screening, pH. Blood glucose. 25. Provide care for and monitor patients receiving enteral or parenteral nutrition. 26. Prepare the patient for surgery, including preoperative skin care. 27. Apply and monitor simple dressings and bandages. 28. Replace non-medicated dressing materials. 29. Check that medication is being taken and monitor its effects. 30. Administer non-medicinal products via aerosol. 31. Monitor patients who have undergone a diagnostic or therapeutic puncture. 32. Detect external parasitic infections and treat those affected. 33. Check that all appliances are working properly. 34. Helping patients to accept their treatment. 35. Provide psychological help and support to the patient. 36. Supporting patients and their families during crises and at the end of life. 37. Responding to emergencies, Plan O, R, S, E, C. B. Public health nurses are authorized to provide the following nursing care on the basis of a doctor's prescription. 1. Administering medication. 2. Practicing injections, IM for SCID. 3. Administer and monitor an infusion. 4. Insert, monitor and remove a short catheter, or an infusion needle from a superficial vein in the limbs or an epicranial vein. 5. Carry out oral care involving the application of medicinal products. 6. Spray the medication. 7. Practice using medication inhalers. 8. Perform ear baths and administer medicinal ear drops. 9. Rinse the eye and apply eye drops. 10. Perform sinus irrigation using catheters, fitted by the doctor. 11. Take medicinal baths. 12. Administer a vaginal injection. 13. Insert a rectal probe. 14. Perform an evacuation enema. Perform an evacuation enema. 15. Clean the perineal area. 16. Perform bladder irrigation, instillation, and catheterization. The first catheterization in men is carried out by the doctor. 17. Administer an intraurethral instillation. 18. Insert a gastric tube for tube feeding, suctioning, gastric lavage, or feeding. 19. Administer oxygen via a nasal cannula, mask, or tent. 20. Connecting and monitoring peritoneal and renal dialysis, hemodialysis. 21. Monitor and care for patients during medical evacuation. 22. Practice taking venous and capillary blood samples. 23. Practice taking samples from the skin, appendages, and mucous membranes. 24. Collect sputum, stool, and urine samples. 25. Collect catheters, drains, and sutures for analysis. 26. Perform an electrocardiogram. 27. Carry out tuberculin tests. 28. Apply specialized and medicated dressings. Specialized and medicated dressings. 29. Remove the sutures, drainage tubes, and wicks. 30. Assist with diagnostic or therapeutic punctures. 31. Help the patient get up early. 32. Provide care for and monitor patients before and after surgery. 33. Monitor the device and the irrigation of a wound, fistula or stoma. 34. Irrigate a wound or a fistula. 35. Carry out postplasty care and prevent stenosis. 36. Apply compression bandages. 37. Remove the plaster cast, or any other means of immobilization. 38. Carry out tracheostomy care, with the first dressing and cannula change being performed by a doctor. 39. Monitor central catheters. 40. Measure central venous pressure. 41. Provide care for and monitor an intubated patient. 42. Monitor standard artificial ventilation and monitoring equipment. 43. Fit a temperature sensor. 44. Monitoring a newborn undergoing phototherapy. 45. Placing a newborn in or taking a newborn out of an incubator. 46. Monitor the diet of infants with nutritional problems. 47. Administer insulin therapy. C. Public health nurses are authorized to carry out the following nursing care in the presence of a doctor. 1. Administering injections for compulsory vaccinations in accordance with the Public Health Code. Taking an arterial blood sample for blood gas analysis. Monitoring and stopping an ascites tap. The doctor's presence is mandatory. 1. Administer injections and infusions of products of human origin that require mandatory compatibility testing. 2. Administer the first injection in a series of allergen injections. Perform mechanical ventilation and maintain an open upper airway. 4. Prepare, operate and monitor extracorporeal circulation devices. 5. Record the electrocardiogram and the electroencephalogram after the test physical stress test, exercise test, or the use of medication that affects the results. 6. Prepare and monitor electroconvulsive therapy. 2. In the doctor's absence, 1. The public health nurse may implement written protocols for emergency care. Urgence determines AU prealable by the doctor in charge. The British RB, management and organizational function. 1. Help organize a care unit. 2. Organizing and managing care. 3. Manage the nursing record and contribute to the management of the medical record. Manage equipment. The first 17 see supervisory with training role, to contribute to the initial and continuing training of healthcare staff. The second D, information, education and communication functions. 1. Participer auxiliary séances d'information, de-education et de communication. E. Search function. Take part in research projects initiated by the institution, by a group or on an individual basis. The third F. Integration and reintegration function. To contribute to the integration and reintegration of individuals into social and professional life. The A8G assessment function. 1. Work with the healthcare team to carry out an ongoing assessment of the care provided and the activities of the departments. 3. Legislation governing the profession. 1. Public Health Code, Official Gazette Number 101 of the 19th of December, 1976. Article 46. Medical assistants are required, the fourth one. To act within the strict limits determined by their qualifications. 2. To limit their involvement to the prescription or instructions received. 3. To seek immediate treatment from a dentist or pharmacists, where, in the course of their work, complications arise, or are likely to arise in the course of treatment, that do not fall within the scope of the responsibilities assigned to them. 4. To keep, where they are authorized to practice in private practice, a register of people to whom they have provided care, within the limits set by a decree of the Minister for Public Health. Article 47. It is prohibited for healthcare assistants, 1. To alter medical instructions, or to carry them out under conditions different from those prescribed by the practitioner. 2. To advertise or practice technical or therapeutic methods other than those taught at institutes and schools recognized by the minister responsible for public health. 3. To promise to alleviate or cure an ailment by means of secret or occult methods. Article 48. Except in cases provided for by law, medical auxiliaries and students at paramedical training institutes, and schools may not disclose any information that comes to their knowledge in the course of their professional duties, or during their training placement, and which, by their very nature, must remain confidential. Article 49. Any person who unlawfully practices as a medical assistant, thereby contravening the provisions set out in Article 44 above. Article 50. Any person practicing a medical auxiliary profession is subject to supervision by the Wala's Director of Health. They must provide the Director with all information and reports required under the regulations in force. Article 51. For each of the medical auxiliary bodies, the Minister responsible for public health sets out the list of procedures falling within their remit and diagnostic procedures, and the therapeutic procedures they may, where appropriate, carry out, as well as the list of medicines and items they may possess, use or prescribe. Executive Decree No. 11/121, dated 15 Rabi Ethani 1432, corresponding to the 20th of March, 2011, on the special status of civil servants belonging to the public health paramedical staff, defining the duties assigned to public health nurses. Art. 41. Public health nurses are responsible, in particular, to contribute to the maintenance, restoration and promotion of people's physical and mental health, to provide nursing care in accordance with the duties specific to their role, on the basis of a doctor's prescription, or in the presence of a doctor, and in cases of extreme emergency in accordance with written emergency protocols. To monitor, assess and keep track of changes in patients' health. To draw up the care plan, plan the related activities, and maintain and update the patient's care record. To welcome and provide academic support to students and trainees.